All right, let's chat about it. We've got to chat all things United States women's national team. Also today, the January camp roster
Is
dropped
it
on
still
Thursday.
January 5th? Is it
I
still
think it
January
might.
5th? I just don't know.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Saturday. Hey, everybody! Thanks for joining us in the weekend. But no, it's still January 5th. The roster dropped on Thursday. 24 players named to this January camp roster, which will take place in New Zealand. The United States women's national team will participate in a 6-day training camp before capping off this trip with a pair of friendlies against New Zealand, the co host of the 2023 World Cup. The friendlies will take place on January 17th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and then January 20th, also 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Woo, those are some painful kickoff times. But listen, it's World Cup prep for all of us involved here.
It is.
That's really the truth. But let's get into this roster, Lisa. Before we got this roster, you and I linked up for an episode of Attacking Third, and we did a wish list episode. We decided to kick off the new year and say, hey, we'd really like to see players X, Y, and Z, and NMLP amongst
26
these.
letters. We gave 26 letters on our
We
wish
gave
list
a
roster.
we gave
Vlatko
a
only
whole
gave us
alphabet.
24.
We gave a whole alphabet. Listen, I love the wish list because they're
Me
ours,
too.
and we shoot for the moon, and we're very ambitious with it. But you know what? It's a January window. It's not an official FIFA window. Um, so I mean, really, it's like we could have had like 30 player rosters if we really, really wanted to go there. But we went with 26. We like the number. We are hopeful. We're trying to manifest that there will be 26 player rosters for the 2023 World Cup, as it was for the 2023 Men's World Cup, and or excuse me, the 2022 Men's World Cup. And so I was curious as to who these 24 were. So as soon as we saw the number, it says, the headline. You see the headline. Andonovski names 24 player roster, and we said, Who's it gonna be? And you know what, Lisa? When you and I did our wish list, we had a good chunk of these players on there because we went with what's considered at this point with the player pool the usual suspects. So let's break it down. I'll go with the goalkeeper, defenders, and you can let the good people know about the midfielders and forwards. For goalkeepers, officially going to New Zealand, three keepers: Adriana French, Casey Murphy, and Alyssa Nair. The defender core is Alana Cook, Emily Fox, Crystal Dunn, Naomi Girma, Sophia Huerta, Haley Mace, Becky Sauerbrunn, and Emily Sonnet.
Midfielders, 7 named to Vlatko Andonovski's roster: Sam Coffey, Lindsay Horan, Taylor Korniak, Rose Lavelle, Christy Mewis, Ashley Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan. And then for the forward squad, there's 6 players: Ashley Hatch, Alex Morgan, Midge Purse, Trinity Rodman, Lynn Williams, and Mallory Swanson. For those that don't know who the heck Mallory Swanson is, it is the former Mallory Pugh. She married the Chicago Cubs shortstop Dansby Swanson in December, so just about a month ago. Congrats to Mal. And she's now playing with Swanson on the back of her jersey, and we get to see that as soon as January when they play these matches against New Zealand. So we'll try to remind everyone constantly, Mallory Swanson, the former Mallory Pugh, but she rounds out the roster at 24 players. And like you mentioned, Sandra, you and I, we picked 26 to go on this roster. I'm pleased with Vlatko's 24, right? Like overall, based on how many he could have chosen, how many less he could have chosen. He could have gone with 22. He could have gone with 20. The more, the merrier in my mind. That's why we wanted 26. But these players on here, I mean, when we did our wish list, we also had goalkeepers, Adie Franch, Casey Murphy, and Alyssa Nair. So no surprises there at this point. I think it really comes down to between the goalkeeper battle, which one's going to win out for number 1. I'm giving it to Alyssa Nair right now. So then who wins out for number 2, right? I don't think that anything is set in stone there. On the backside of things for Vlatko Andonovski and this team, it comes down to who's performing well and who's performing consistently and staying healthy, especially between those 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. Listen, I we going through each of these positional areas when we're looking at the players who got named to this roster. I think there were some surprises along the way. I don't want to say they were huge, massive, shocking,
Yeah, there's
absolutely.
no one that we haven't
Yeah.
seen before, right?
Over the last, yeah, exactly, precisely, over the last year to 18 months, there's nothing too shocking in terms of the names that are either absent or b uh included, back into the fold. So maybe let's talk about some of the things that surprised us, within this roster. I mentioned before we started talking about this official drop how, the January camp, it's outside of a particular window. So what does that mean for players who are playing overseas or participating in mid-season of things or preseason of in other areas? What does that look like? What does that mean? Lindsey Horan tied with Olympic Lyon. What was that going to look like? How are those conversations, to get a player involved in this type of experience? But clearly great relationships, is named to this 24 player camp for January. Andonovski, in his media availability, echoed those sentiments as such, was asked about it, said that they've got a great relationship with Lyon. Those conversations obviously went well. Horan is inclusion on this roster is because of that. So we're obviously going to see the continuation of her in the midfield over the course of these two friendlies, I'm assuming. But there was also the question of the absence of somebody like a Mia Fishel, and we talked about Mia Fishel a little bit during the wish list episode on A3, and what that could mean and what this looks like in 2023 as the U.S. Women's National Team is sort of turning this page and kind of really getting the focal point on the World Cup. It's like literally World Cup or nothing. Moving forward this year. So I know you and I were both curious about that, and Andonovski in the press conference was again asked about this. And I thought it was important because I think you're looking at players who you might have to have conversations with their domestic club to get them involved in camps and what that's going there. And he reiterated, he's been asked about this. I think it feels like endless times already when it comes to Mia Fishel. But she's someone that has been doing quite well. Yeah. Shout out to Celeste. I see you. Yeah, I agree. Mia should have been called up a while ago. I think I'm looking at this and just sort of what you hear coming out of the press conferences and then sort of looking at the players' performances, you just sort of feels like a little bit of a disconnect. But Andonovski is adamant that they're still keeping tabs on a player like Fishel and that conversations are still being had. I just sort of feel like with this current timeline, and Lisa, this is something that you and I chatted about in that previous episode on the wish list, was with there being now 6 months building up to the World Cup, that maybe the combination of the timeline or the timing ahead of the World Cup is we're possibly not going to see a Mia Fishel in these
Yeah.
U.S. women's national team camps. And that absolutely, like, it kind of blows my mind. I don't know how you look at a player like Mia Fishel and sort of see the 2022 campaign that she put together. She was the global leading goal scorer. Um, and then sort of have the argument that you're just sort of keeping conversations and sort of keeping tabs on her performances. And we saw a very young player in Alyssa Thompson get called into national team camps towards the end of the 2022 season. And these weren't just any regular national team camps. We're talking about getting
Big
invited
ones.
to go to Europe and go again and get a look at top tier competition. So there's a disconnect for me, I think, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for Mia Fishel to eventually make her national team debut.
Yeah.
But obviously, as the months go by, as the week goes by, I'm getting more and more deterred by that, and that we'll see it before a World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said that perfectly because we are now 5 months out, right? We were having these conversations, you and I on Attacking Third, the media with Vlatko Andonovski, apparently Vlatko Andonovski with Mia Fishel, from what he says months ago about her performance in Mexico and what she's been able to do in that domestic league and how she's been able to perform at a very high level, scoring goals at an incredible clip, and staying consistent. Well, you and I have been talking about it. Everyone's been talking about it from what I can see. And the fact that we are now 5 months out from the World Cup and she's still not in these conversations, I guess, enough with Vlatko Andonovski, or not in the front of his mind enough to be called in to get looks, whether it was in October, whether it was in November, and now it didn't happen in January. And at this point, if I'm forgetting about the individual names and the individual players, and I'm just looking at my team, my
Yeah.
nation going to a World Cup tournament, I don't want there to be so many drastic changes within 3 months of the World Cup, within 4 months of the World Cup. I don't. Whether that's big players coming back from injury that just haven't been playing enough, whether it's new players getting integrated in, that's something that the closer we get to the World Cup, the harder it is to shake it up. He had those opportunities to bring in Mia Fishel, and he did not do that. Vlatko Andonovski did not do that. She's an incredible player. I think she could make a difference on this team. I think that she would contribute, and it would be incredible to watch her play in the front line alongside someone like a Sophia Smith or a
Yeah.
Mallory Pugh, even an Alex Morgan. Like, I think that that would be really beneficial for the United States, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it, I don't foresee it happening. Vlatko Andonovski kind of alluded to that as well, that the roster that we're getting right now is probably going to stay consistent moving forward, barring some of the injured players that are missing from this roster or working their way back consistently. I'm hoping that as soon as the World Cup is done in the end of August, Mia Fishel is right to the top of the conversation, right to the top of the list, and she can get in on next year, and what can happen in the fall and everything that's to come for this team. It's a little crazy to think about how much she has been able to do and why she still hasn't been called up to a camp just to get a look, just to see what's out there.
Yeah, no, it's you look at players and how they sort of navigate their careers and where those seasons eventually lead them to. We're talking about a player pool that has seen players split time, whether it's between NWSL
Mhm.
or clubs in Europe, whether it's been women's Super League teams or French Division One teams. Um, and that you have players in this larger pool that are no strangers to that, right? Having spent time in different areas of the globe, pursuing their playing options. And it's just yeah, Liga MX Femenil is it a young league and young up and coming league still? Yeah, sure. But I don't think that negates all of the things and development that Mia Fishel has achieved while playing for Liga MX Femenil. I mean, you're talking 33 goals. That's a massive amount of goals, and I'm just not convinced that if Mia Fishel is scoring 33 goals in Sweden or 33 goals in France, that she's not getting a call up to some of these camps, especially in a 2022 where there was constant conversation about injury and player rotations and players having to come in and out because of those injuries and or players who are out on maternity leave. So um, I think it's going to be one of those elephants in the room. I think that people will constantly keep talking about, right? Until they see a player like Fishoin. But I'm with you in terms of the
Yeah,
timing of things, and that we might not see it before the World Cup, but who knows? Perhaps we'll see it
I
post World
know.
Cup.
Hey, you never know when we'll see it, if we'll see it. But talking about these surprising names, I know you mentioned Lindsay Horan, considering her club career and her club seasons happening right now. There were a couple other names that were a little bit surprising to me. I didn't put them on my wish list. In particular, forward Ashley Hatch out of Washington Spirit. She was the 2021 Golden Boot winner. She had been in the U.S. roster and in camps pretty consistently until CONCACAF W Championship, because she went to Mexico for that tournament and ended up getting injured. She hurt her back and ended up leaving. And that's when we got to see Sam Coffey come in. So, hey, there's always a silver lining with some of these things. It's good to see Ashley Hatch has recovered. She's done rehabbing and she's back to be able to play full force. But I'm just surprised that she has made her way back into this roster at this point, considering at that point, it looked a little bit like a battle between Alex Morgan and Ashley Hatch. And Alex Morgan won that battle, in my mind, between two players that have similar styles, that can play alongside similar personnel. And Hatch was getting moments in games and minutes in games, but she wasn't, in those 15, 20 minutes, she wasn't blinding me with what she was able to do. It was a little lackluster. And perhaps it was because she was dealing with a bit of an injury. So I am excited to see her. She was a surprising name on this roster for me. Another one in this forward group, I'm also going to say it, Midge Purse out of New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC. This is a player that has been called in with Vlatko Andonovski. She's got 20 caps, 4 goals with the U.S. team. But towards the end of 2022, she was not performing consistently and at a high enough level that Vlatko Andonovski decided not to call her in again. And even with club at Gotham in the NWSL, she just wasn't scoring enough. It was just interesting to watch a player that went from, in 2021, being an outside back, being a forward, being an outside back. She was playing all these different roles. And it almost looked like she had a little bit more freedom because she could play all these different roles. And it was like, all right, we need you to score goals. Go have fun. And now she's really settled into the front line at Gotham. The front line, she's being listed as a forward here with Vlatko Andonovski, despite having the background as a defender. And I just haven't seen Purse perform as high as I want someone as a forward on my World Cup roster team for the United States. Those are the other two names that shocked me a little bit, but you also have to look at injury and who's not back, and maybe they're taking the place of some of those players.
No, I'm listen, I'm with you in terms of players. Those are two players who were maybe the surprise in terms of the inclusion on this list, especially because of with Purse specifically. Um and everything that we heard from the coaching staff about um her further absence from the team. She was not part of those rosters, I believe, that closed out the 2022 calendar year for the United States women's national team. We didn't see her in Europe. We didn't see her against Germany, and it was interesting to see her name on this 24 player roster for me, because everything that Andonovski sort of implied with this was just that he wanted to see better form from
Yeah.
Purse. And we heard from Purse in media availabilities during NWSL, and she referenced, the difficulties that she had throughout the year. Some of that, was dealing with injury. And the timing was also difficult for me to grasp, right? When Purse was ultimately sort of dismissed at that point. The timing was difficult for me to grasp, because if the conversation is around form for a player, the window of opportunity to sort of allow this player to get back into form is pretty limited. We're talking about asking a player to go back to an NWSL club who at this point is well out of playoff consideration. In the NWSL, Gotham was a team that struggled in 2022 in many areas. It wasn't just in the attacking areas in which they saw Midge Purse along those lines. But the timing of it was really, really off for me, because it's like you're asking this player to go back, and there's
Yeah.
about a month or so left of regular season. Where is the development supposed to happen, and how is that supposed to continue for this player? And then you essentially roll that into an off season for these players, and now she's called back into this January camp. So I'm eager to see if maybe some time off has helped. I think time off is
Yeah.
important for everybody out there. So
Totally.
not just, but especially players.
Physically,
Um,
mentally, emotionally,
yeah,
it helps. It helps give a little reset and perhaps give you that recharge to say, you know what? They told me what I need to do. I know I didn't do it well enough before. Like, let's go punch him in the throat.
yeah, but we did have Hatch was one of those players, I think, that might have been absent from both of our wish
Yeah.
list as well. And so to see her inclusion on this too, I think that was also one of those like surprise names for us, whether it was a purse or head. So I guess my question to you is like, if we don't see these injuries to Sophia Smith or to Megan Rapinoe, and Sophia Smith is absent from this roster due to a foot injury. Vlatko Andonovski has said it is it's not a very drastic or serious injury, just needs some more time. Same with Megan Rapinoe, who's dealing with an ankle injury. So, Lisa, if we don't see these two forwards unavailable for this, do we see a Hatch and do we see a Purse available to go to New Zealand?
No. If Sophia Smith is available to play and not injured, we don't see Midge Purse. If Megan Rapinoe is available and ready to play, we do not see Ashley Hatch. No, I think that it allows for the opportunity for Hatch and Purse to get into this camp. This is their shot, right? Prove that they deserve to be on this roster and kick out one of the other 6 names that are on there in those talks. And I'm including Sophia Smith and Megan Rapinoe in those conversations.
Lisa getting ruthless. I'm here for it. Lisa
I'm
Roman, the
being
ruthless.
Roman's rants. We're going for it. You asked me a question, Sandra. I don't think so. I don't think so. But this is their opportunity, right? And clearly, they're still in the conversations with Vlatko Andonovski, and they've done enough. They've done something to get in there. Otherwise, maybe it would have been Alyssa Thompson, right? Maybe he would have only done 23. So who knows? But I don't think so at this point. But you mentioned Sophia Smith, Megan Rapinoe, 2 players that are missing from this roster due to injury. I think that they're big holes to be missing at this point, but they're injured. They're not going to play. So we want them to get healthy. We want them to get better and recover. But without them, we talked a little bit about injury. We also saw the return of Lynn Williams and Emily Sonnet, 2 players that have been recovering from long-term injuries. They're both back on this roster. They were also both on yours and mine, our wish list rosters. I'm thrilled that Lynn Williams is on this roster. I am thrilled to see what she can do, how she's been working in the off season, how she's getting back and ready to play. I'm excited about the future of Lynn Williams and what she can contribute to this team.
I'm with you 100%. Look, you and I are 2 people who've had the opportunity and the privilege to have Lynn Williams on this show as a guest. Um, have had interviews with her. I have absolutely missed watching Lynn Williams play soccer, and I am so amped that she is back and ready to go. Apparently in 2023, was out nearly all of 2022 with a lingering hamstring injury, had to get some surgery, I believe, on that. But this is a player I think that Andonovski has missed for quite some time. I think when you look back into the early days of the Andonovski era, specifically, 2019 as they went into 2020. We saw a player like Lynn Williams getting consistent call-ins to
Mhm.
his camps and seeing not only the consistent call-ins, but consistent minutes on the pitch and producing for this team and actually really, really providing a lot of dynamic things in the attack. And I think in 2022, this year where maybe they were hoping to sort of develop some more cohesion, having her, her absence, I think you sort of saw at times where you could maybe pluck out a game or two and say, you know what, this game can use some Lynn
A
Williams
little Lynn.
here, a little Lynn in this moment. So I'm very excited to see Lynn Williams back on this roster. I'm also curious to see how the coaching staff wants to reintegrate her back into this team because also in light of her absence, what sort of happened in 2022 is we did see the return of Alex Morgan and her
Mhm.
form. We got to continue to see the development of Sophia Smith. I mean, we're talking about MVP caliber development, Mallory Swanson and her resurgence in 2022. So I'm curious as to how that's going to look. So obviously we know Sophia Smith isn't included in this roster due to injury. Are we going to see Lynn Williams get a start in her place? Essentially, what are we going to see?
I love that. I love that proposal and that question that you just threw out there. Will we see Lynn Williams get a start? Um, I don't know how she's doing right now. Like, I'm sure she's back to full throttle. I don't think in the first game, maybe in the second. I would love to see her get a start, though. I would. I want to see Mallory Swanson, Alex Morgan, Lynn Williams. Like, I think that would be pretty fun to see that front line. What about Trinity Rodman in there? Like,
Oh yeah.
there's still a lot to be excited about with this roster. I mean, there's plenty to be excited about. Do you think we'll see Lynn Williams get a start?
I hope so. I don't know if we'll get to see her get a start, but I do hope we get to see her um, get some minutes. I mean, this is essentially these would essentially be her first games back, period. On a soccer pitch, since 2022. So I'm eager to see it, but I don't know if we will actually see a start, because that was a question mark that I had
Yeah.
around somebody like Tierna Davidson in case she was going to be on this roster, and she was not.
Mhm.
So Katarina Macario, Tierna Davidson, Kelly O'Hara, Sam Hughes, these are players who are still absent from the national team. There were some small updates given on these players by Andonovski in his media availability. Said that Davidson and O'Hara were extremely close, but it would assume that we are likely to see them for something like She Believes Cup. And he did mention Macario is also very close, reference the timeline of about 4 to 5 weeks for participation in like contact type
Mhm.
of training. So, yeah, we'll see. I guess we're
Yeah,
going
I
to
mean,
really get a better idea of what this type of roster could look like with that when She Believes Cup rolls around in February.
yeah, I think She Believes Cup will have a little bit more weight with the roster that Vlatko Andonovski puts out there. Hopefully, some time for Sophia Smith, Megan Rapinoe to recover and get back to full strength. But between yours and mine and our wish list rosters, we both had Katarina Macario listed with doubts that she would play. Right? We were
Yeah.
very honest with ourselves. We were like, she's not going to see the field, but we want her in camp. We want her in training with this team, but she's not at that point yet. And Vlatko Andonovski let people know that in the media availability that she can't do contact yet. So there's no point in bringing her in at this stage. Remember, he tried to wean Crystal Dunn back in, coming back from her maternity leave, and she was cleared for contact. She was cleared to play intensely, but she was not going to play in the games. So that's what I thought he was going to do with Kat Macario. That didn't happen. We'll see her hopefully in February. Tierna Davidson and Kelly O'Hara, we both had Davidson and O'Hara on our rosters with hopes that we would see Davidson. I mean, we talked about that at nauseum, saying that the future of the center back role could be Tierna Davidson and Naomi Gurma, and that's what I want to see. I was hoping we'd get a glimpse of it, or at least in practice, they would get a glimpse of it themselves. Not going to happen this time around. And Sam Ewis still not ready yet to return, still dealing with a really tough injury that she gave her a really big setback in 2022. Just a lot of injuries, but I think that in what we have with Williams coming back, we talked about it. Sonnet coming back. Haley Mace also on this roster. I did not have her on my roster. You had her on yours. I think it's a good shout. The Kansas City current defender, midfielder. She's listed as a defender here. I think it's a good shout for Vlatko Andonovski. Strengthen up that back line. Why not? She's been playing well. Keep it going.
Yeah, I think, listen, my inclusion for her during the wish list was just sort of one of those indicators. It's just kind of like, are we still in that window of time where we're waiting to see who is actually available and who is actually able to get a run out? So we saw a mix of that. This is, I think, that first round. We've seen a mix of that. We still have a handful of players who are close, but not quite there, and a couple of players who are making their return
I
to
I
the
can't
player
imagine
pool.
how those players feel that are close, but not quite yet, because I'm, like, jumping out of my
Agonizing.
shoes here. Yeah, I'm jumping out of my shoes, and I'm not even involved. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine how players like Kat Macario, Tierna Davidson, Kelly O'Hara feel, to wanna get back in the swing of things.
Oh yeah, especially as like the year turned to like 2023, right? Where like all sights
Mhm.
on the World Cup. Yeah, I would imagine that it's a little bit agonizing to still be out, but they're working their way back, and who knows? Maybe when we do the previews for these upcoming matches, we'll have a little bit more information, and I'm sure we'll have some more fun about it, talking about who we actually think might get some starts or two in New Zealand with this roster.